are a reproductive justice group driven by young people, and we focus on issues such as sex positivity, parenting, health and wellness, abortion rights, and everything else under that big umbrella. So I'm very happy to share this forum with you. It's been a collaborative effort between SFC, Student Feminist Coalition, URGE, and Amy from Pro-Choice Ohio. We wanted to provide a platform for all these wonderful panelists to share their experiences with social justice, activism, feminism, reproductive justice. We just really wanted to share that with all of you. So I'm excited to see what will be imparted today and what we'll take away from it.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm the current president of Student Feminist Coalition. We started last semester, and originally we were the Student Women's Association. And after that organization kind of disbanded, we took it over and tried to take a new approach with activism. So I just wanted to thank our panelists for coming, and then what Marissa said, we just wanted to share the knowledge that they have with you guys so everyone can learn from what they have.
And now our panelists will introduce themselves.
Let's see, right next to the podium. Can everyone hear me if I don't use the microphone? Okay, good. My name is Maria Miranda. I represent a couple organizations. Primarily, I'm here to represent New Voices Cleveland, which is part of New Voices for Reproductive Justice, which covers Pittsburgh and Philadelphia as well. New Voices is a women of color led and women of color focused reproductive justice organization. So we look at the intersection of human rights and sexual justice. I am also on the board of Pro-Choice Ohio. I also work for our Reality Check, which is an online publication that focuses on reproductive social justice news. So my business card is down there, so read us. So that's what I do organizationally. My work within organizing and women's rights and reproductive justice is mostly looking at organizational infrastructures. So these days, I do less around activism and advocacy and more around making sure that social justice agencies have the infrastructure and framework to be successful. In other words, if we don't have organizations around to do this work, how will we advance our movement? So for me, it's looking at things like fundraising and resource development, making sure that organizations have the money that they need to have staff, to have organizers on staff, to have leadership, to have computers, to have technology to do their work. It's about planning, it's about long-term strategic visioning in these organizations. So I do a lot of that work on the board member level and the volunteer level to make sure that we have capacity to do what we do. So it's less me, like back in the day, it was rallies, there was street action, things like that, which sometimes still happens, subversive activities in the community. But these days, it's a little bit more sophisticated because we're recognizing that the far right and other extreme movements have a lot of resources, they have a lot of people, and they have a lot of advantages that we don't necessarily have on the left or on the far left or the radical left, whatever you want to call it. And so it's important for us to combat things that way. So that means making sure people are trained, that we're professional activists in a lot of ways, to make sure that we're able to get out there and do things like this, as well as organize like a covert action evening or a Twitter chat or a letter writing campaign or petitioning or lobbying, anything like that. So that's kind of what I do in terms of activities. Also looking at reproductive justice as a term, it is not synonymous with pro-choice. It's a whole different framework. It's founded by women of color. It's about women of color. So I caution people to not use reproductive justice as another way to talk about abortion or choice because it's a lot more than that. So we can always go into more of that later in the panel, but definitely want to put that out there for consideration.
So I might leave the mic. Is it on? Is it on? Yeah, so is it on?
It should be.
I feel like it's not. Can you hear me? Okay. So I am Dr. Bly. I teach here in Women's Studies at Cleveland State, and I've taught here since about 2008, I think. And I love it. It's one of my favorite. I have 3 jobs. It's tied with Laurel. I also teach at Laurel School, which is a private school, all-girls school on the east side. I like Cleveland State because many students come here and they are first-generation college students, or they perhaps their parents have gone here, they have relatives who have gone here, they work, many of them, they have kids, they have families, they're from you all are all age ranges, lots of racial diversity, lots of gender diversity, and as I said, socioeconomic diversity. And that to me is very powerful, to be able to sit in a room and have conversations with students about gender equality, gender inequality, racial inequality, and those intersections of our social identities. As I said, I also teach at Laurel School, and I am there full-time as dean and as a teacher of history and gender studies, and I'm a yoga teacher. So my activism is every single day, in most moments of my life. From what I put on my plate at lunch and as I sit and eat with my students, to where I purchase my clothes, to how I model my behavior in front of my daughter. And we can talk a lot more about that. And like Maria, I spent a lot of time doing regular kind of grassroots protests as a young person, and now incorporated in this intellectual frame in the classroom and through my written work. So that's sort of the lens through which I'm here tonight.
Hi, my name is Molly Marvar, and I'm the founder of Proclaim Your A. Proclaim Your A is a t-shirt campaign that I created that is for abortion rights and awareness. And it started back in 2012. I had an abortion, and my experience afterward kind of led me to decide that I wanted to get more involved in activism and reproductive rights. And so I started this campaign and work mostly with preterm right now, which is in Shaker Heights, or Cleveland. And the goals of Proclaim Your A is kind of fourfold. The circulation of the t-shirts, the goals include generating discussion that includes facts about reproductive rights and reproductive choices, instead of just getting lost in all of the emotion that tends to surround it. We want to help normalize the conversation and remove the stigma that is attached to these kinds of discussions. As many people know, the word abortion has a way of just stopping discussion completely. Can't even say it in movies half the time. They refer to it as smishmortion. So, just saying the word is important. Another goal for Proclaim Your A is to cultivate a network of support for those who have had abortions, the people that were involved in that decision making, and then for the workers in the facilities, especially with more recent attacks. It can be dangerous to express your desire for choice and to talk about your decisions that you've made. So I, along with the many other organizations that are already doing this, I wanted to join in and kind of find my own voice in that as well. And then lastly, it was created to encourage activism, and finding your own path is important. I was 32 when I first started really getting involved and becoming less apathetic towards politics and what was really going on. And so being informed is really critical. So yeah, that's it.
My name is Abby Hanley, and I am the training manager at the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center here in Cleveland. So we are an organization that serves survivors of domestic violence and child abuse all across Cuyahoga County. And we serve about 40,000 people each year in our county alone. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of how much of an issue intimate partner violence is, not just here in Cleveland, but in every community in every state and every country across this globe. So I primarily focus on training within our organization and throughout the community. So I'm responsible for all of our internal professional development. What kind of opportunities are we offering to our advocates to make sure that they have every possible tool available in their toolkit to support survivors on their journeys to safety and independence. And in addition to that, I spend a lot of time doing training and education out in the community. So as an advocate for survivors of domestic violence, I completely realize that any one of us in any role has the potential to receive a disclosure of an unhealthy relationship, at some point in your lives, you're going to have a friend, you are going to have a loved one who is in a relationship that's unhealthy and dangerous. And I think that the more we know about intimate partner violence, the better equipped we're going to be to support other people. So that's why I'm going and talking to, you know, hairstylists, dentists, doctors, teachers, other professionals who are serving youth and families in the community. Every single one of us needs to have a foundation of knowledge around intimate partner violence, because there's huge intersections with child abuse, with sexual violence, with so many other forms of power-based personal violence that people are experiencing early on in their lives and carrying those cycles of violence into their adulthood. So I am super, super passionate about having conversations about these issues that people really haven't started talking about a lot, like in the media and things like that, until kind of the last few years. I've noticed a huge change in the way that people are looking at these issues. And obviously, I think this goes without saying, but there's a huge intersection between, you know, the movement to end violence against women and the feminist movement, because this movement was born out of the feminist movement. And we're all working towards the same goals, I think, which are to create a safer world where we all have the right to be ourselves, to love ourselves, to get the respect that we deserve from the people around us. And our mission is really to just empower individuals as much as we can to have those kinds of safe and healthy relationships that they deserve. So that's kind of my professional hat that I wear currently in my work role. I'm also really, really big on the body positive movement that's going on right now, which is just, I think, one of the best things ever in life. It makes me so happy. I did a lot of work around the marriage equality campaign in the state of Ohio before marriage equality was passed by the Supreme Court. And when I was young, I was super apathetic about social justice. Like, I was the person who, you know, if somebody came into my classroom from, you know, Planned Parenthood or wherever, which are amazing organizations, and they're talking about, you know, reproductive health and things like that, and I'm sitting there like I just wasn't interested at the time. And after going to school at Kent State, I studied women's studies, LGBT studies, psychology, and I just realized that there is so much out there in this world that we need to tackle, that we need to do something about, and every single one of us has a role that we can play, a place where we fit into this movement, and you may not have figured out what that is yet, and that's okay, because it took me time too. But that space is there for all of us. We just have to kind of define what we want it to look like in our own lives. And I am just continuously blown away by the things that young people are doing in this movement to end power-based violence. Some of the most incredible things I'm seeing happening at the campus level related to sexual assault and intimate partner violence are being, you know, championed by young people themselves. I run a program for the Lakewood School District that deals with dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. It involves a lot of classroom education, training for teachers, policy development, and just recently there was a group of students who organized a protest against the dress code, which is traditionally a very inherently sexist kind of a thing, and they called the media and brought the media to the school to see this protest. So I'm just, again, really blown away by the things that young people are doing today, and I'm so happy to be able to watch it unfold and to be a part of it. And I'm just happy to be here tonight with all of you, the incredible work you're doing, and I look forward to going through these questions with everybody. So I'll stop there because I get too excited and I could go on forever.
I don't think there's any such thing as too much excitement.
True.
You kind of need it if you're doing this full time, yeah.
Right.
Which is what I promised in my job interview, was boundless enthusiasm. So hello everyone, my name is Annie Kroll. I am the Northern Ohio field organizer for NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio. NARAL is an acronym. It stands for the National Abortion Rights Action League of Ohio. So there is a NARAL national, and there are also state-by-state affiliates, and I am part of the Ohio affiliate based in Cleveland here. But because I'm the Northern Ohio organizer, I do a lot of organizing in Toledo. I'm branching out into Akron and Youngstown this fall. I'm hoping to connect with the folks at Oberlin, and even looking into pushing into the Ohio Valley, into towns like East Liverpool, Warren, places like that. So I am making this job up as I go. I am the first person to work for NARAL to ever have this title of organizer. We finally got some grant money from people who realized that abortion rights in Ohio right now are dire. We have lost half of our clinics in the past 2 years alone. Thank you, John Kasich, our governor, due to things like trap laws and other stuff that I can get into in a little bit more depth later. We are sort of losing clinics right and left to different kinds of loopholes and legality issues that really don't make sense when you examine them a little bit more closely and are very much designed to literally trap women into essentially forced childbirth because, like Maria touched on, reproductive justice as more of an umbrella term encompasses the right to have an abortion or not, but it's so much more, and NARAL is looking right now at whether or not people have the right to an abortion, but also if it's really a choice due to issues of access. So NARAL is a little bit more of a pigeonhole in that we cover sexual health education, peer sexuality initiatives, but largely do abortion rights legislation and legislative work at the State House. So half of our staff is based in Columbus and half of us are in Cleveland. So I didn't start out very politicized about abortion at all. I was raised as a Catholic and went to Catholic school at a place where in middle school they started having us write an essay for an English grade. It was very much required about, so the topic was, why are abortion, cloning, and euthanasia morally wrong and condemned by God? Go. And so you could say I was indoctrinated, though my parents were more progressive than the sort of immediate environment in which I was raised. So I thought that was a little bit funny in middle school, and I couldn't really put my finger on why this was unsettling to sort of come up with this moral absolutism where this choice is wrong, this choice is right, there's no real gray area. And then I started to realize that my personal experience as a queer woman, as a woman of working class, in a middle class environment, me being the person I was sitting in a gray area in a very much black and white environment where some things are accepted and some things are absolutely not, and if they're not, they're either not talked about or you are made to feel guilt about them. Now, Catholicism is a beautiful religion for a lot of folks, but not me. So I don't mean to condemn. If you're religious, we absolutely support religious life. I have several colleagues who identify as Christian or other religions. I'm Team Jewish on the NARAL staff because I have since changed my religious affiliations. So NARAL right now is very much a part of a overarching feminist movement, but we've sort of developed a niche of where we feel the need is the greatest, and right now that's protecting the right to have an abortion. Right now we are facing a serious onslaught of bans. In the past year we've seen the heartbeat bill resurrected, which would ban abortion at 6 weeks. Fortunately it died for a third time, and we will hopefully not be seeing that again. We have the 20-week ban that's facing votes soon in the Senate. We have the Down syndrome ban, which would ban all abortion services for women who receive a Down syndrome diagnosis on their fetus. That's it, and that's it. Like, does your fetus have Down syndrome, regardless of any other complication, you must deliver this child. So that's just a handful of what they're doing, not to mention put other funding into crisis pregnancy centers, which are designed to lure pregnant women in and tell them medically false information and guilt them into carrying their child to term. These receive funding at the state level from our budget, from John Kasich and many of our Congress people. Whereas Planned Parenthood, they attack now, and especially at the national level, they're attacking Planned Parenthood. We see in the news all the time now, but the Ohio State House has been looking into defunding the infant mortality program. So the infant mortality rate in Ohio, particularly for African American women, we are 50th in the whole state for infant mortality rates. We see the most infant mortality in our Black communities than we do in any other part of the country. And literally the only program that we have right now, like any social programming we have is done through Planned Parenthood, is the infant mortality prevention program, and that's helped a lot of women. So right now, my activism is very much on the defensive, and that's pretty exhausting because it feels like in a red-leaning state, I mean, we're kind of a swing state now, but in a red-leaning state, you see a lot of attacks on the culture around abortion. You have the stigma issue that Molly is specifically trying to address. You deal with a lack of ability to have a sort of a dialogue around contraceptive usage and sexuality and pleasure. And there's so many facets to the problems that lead to these sort of multiple oppressions. We're trying at NARAL right now to take a step back, examine where the most dire need is, and from there we're starting to come to terms with a more offensive movement where we're beginning to introduce legislation that would remove the trap laws and would work on funding, abortion funding for Medicaid users, and a series of other barriers right now that exist between a woman and a choice. So that's a little bit about NARAL. We do a lot of volunteer work, and we're sort of building the position I have as organizer from the ground up, like I said. So I'm around as a resource and as a way to connect people with one another. And so I hope that we can all connect before the night's over, and I thank everyone for coming.
Thank you all for sharing a little bit about you. I would invite you to turn your microphones on. There should be a switch on the side of them, so if you feel like you would like to speak with a microphone, I invite you to do that now. I apologize for not telling you beforehand.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
How about now?
Hello.
Sorry, guys.
Can I add a historian perspective, since because I was just actually talking about abortion and reproductive rights as an umbrella term and as an umbrella historically yesterday in, yeah.
Can you bring the microphone closer now? I can't hear you.
Okay, how's that? Better? Ish? Yeah? Yeah.
Much better.
All right, thank you. So I was thinking, I wanted to just put abortion and reproductive rights overall in historical context. And put on my professor/teacher hat and ask you all, how long has abortion existed? Yeah, yeah. When do you think the debate in the U.S., particularly around abortion, began? 2030, thinking about Margaret Sanger. What about after Roe v. Wade? When was what's the date of Roe v. Wade? You don't know what that is? Yeah. 1973, yeah, excellent. So, following Roe v. Wade, when did this contentious debate begin around abortion rights? Anyone know? You're close. Immediately, and yes. So the ultrasound technology plays a huge role in this. Ultrasound was invented around, became used in hospitals around 1979. So it switches the discourse, right, on how we start to understand the fetus. When you can have an ultrasound image of the fetus, it becomes this being that is like actually separate from the woman, right? And this whole debate about personhood is very much connected to this rise and shift in technology. So, and just add that to the discussion that when you say Reagan, it really is around that time, right? Because by around 1982, 1983, it's more ubiquitous for women to actually have ultrasounds. It's not until the 90s that you start to carry around a picture of your fetus after you have your ultrasound picture printed out. And today, if you've seen those pictures, those images, right, they're almost dimensional and in some ways kind of freakish looking. Right? Someone, a friend or a relative will say, oh, here's my baby. Right? So we draw these connections because of the technology.
and then I'll say one more thing and pass the mic. But before this, before we had technology in the mid-19th century, women could say, I'm not pregnant, I have a menstrual block. A menstrual block meant that you knew you had sex and knew you were pregnant, but it wasn't until quickening, which was when a woman could feel the fetus's heart rate, that she could not have an abortion. That doesn't mean that midwives still didn't give them, that they were not legal, but that reality is based on the woman's opinion in the woman's body. And so this recent debate around the personhood of the fetus has been quite problematic, really, for the movement overall.
Thank you, Dr. Lai, for sharing. We have a list of topics for discussion that we'd like to kind of pick and choose them and offer them to you. And then we would invite you all to share whatever you feel, and then we'll take questions from the audience.
So at this point, we would just like to hear from our panel what defines the feminism of our generation. And specifically things about intersectional feminism, which is a topic and a term that we hear a lot, but not everyone knows what it means. And also the dynamics of power and privilege that we might play into that. And even mainstream feminism today and how we've been able to use things like social media. So whoever feels they have that question.
I'm just kidding. It's so hard.
It's very layered question.
Burn everything down.
We're back to school now.
I guess I'll start. Oh, thank you. So you said mainstream feminism, social media,
Feminism of our generation.
feminism of your generation, because we're different generations.
Or feminism
You
that we
kids.
see today.
Okay. Kids in the ways. Now, Dr. Wyatt, I can talk for hours about whether or not there's ways in feminism, which if you want to get into that conversation, we will. We love it. So, I mean, mainstream feminism, I think a long time ago I said to not, define feminism for someone else. So, for example, when Sarah Palin said she was a feminist, I said, okay. A lot of people were like, no, it's not. I mean, because you want to look at practice, but bear with me for a minute. I try not to critique people who call themselves feminists, even when I question their activities or their end objectives, their end game objectives in the movement, if you want to call it that. To me, I don't think there's a feminist movement anymore. I think there's a lot of different tiny movements working towards a similar goal, kind of along what Annie was saying, is like, looking at what one organization's role is in an overall striving for justice. And I guess that's okay. I think when we start to, especially ways to identify periods of feminism, which is one thing that kind of like historically look at periods of activism and what those markers are, is one thing, but to try to put a unified brand on type of feminism is a little problematic. I'll tell you why later. I'm really thinking about that, and I don't like it. Also, I think there is some co-opting that happens in feminist movements. I think my litmus test is this. Once the patriarchy likes it, it's no longer radical. So when you start to see people like Beyonce, who is like a saint to me, I love her. She can burn this down right now and I would not be mad. However, when she performed at, I think the VMAs were Marshall, and she had feminists in the background, people were like super excited. I was less than impressed because at that point, once it's okay to be a feminist, you're probably not doing it you're supposed to. I think feminists are supposed to be pissing people off constantly. If you're an activist, you're not supposed to make friends necessarily. I know we talk about coalition building, but in general, I don't think that the mainstream should approve you because you're trying to dismantle the mainstream. So I'm very wary of co-authors. Anytime it becomes a trend, it's okay. Or people on a t-shirt, I get a little bit side eye. So, but social media has a role in activism because really technology and social media has allowed whole movements to grow, which generate information and use it to make more money. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to what we wouldn't anymore. I just want to be like, okay.
Well, you guys heard the acronym Panther, proud Americans getting token Hillary estrogen replacement, which was the argument for why Sarah Palin was able, people were able to send Sarah Palin as oh, well, that's Hillary really, so now people want to vote for a woman. And obviously, it's so dumb that people won't notice that Sarah Palin isn't anything like Hillary Clinton.
That's right. This guy's like storming out. He's like, she is a feminist, and I believe her.
I drank too much water. I'm sorry.
I like your stance. He's like, no, screw that.
I would agree with Maria as far as the feminist awakening is concerned. I'm actually working right now on a book about this, about third wave feminism and Generation X, which is, I know it's our generation. It's interesting. I think that our generation really allowed a lot of the conversations that are taking place around intersectionality come to play on what your generation's feminism. I also think, though, that it has been co-opted in ways that often shuts down conversations. One of the things that we don't see much here at CSU, but that I know is happening down the street in Oberlin, is the conversation around trigger warnings. And you all know what that is, the trigger warning. Usually my CSU students, some of my oral students do know trigger warnings, right, Elaine? But in literature classes, English classes, I have a friend who's a professor there, she's had a very hard time in Oberlin because people don't want to have conversations about classic texts that have been taught, and also texts that are more contemporary and controversial because they're afraid it's going to make them upset or make them feel a certain way. And I think that the third wave feminism in many ways made those kind of conversations about individual voice very possible. So one might think of that as an example of co-opting, and also an example of something that was put forward to be very useful and to give people power to see voice in their own identities, but then went a little bit too far. Because I would say that if you're in a classroom, particularly in a university, if your professor is not making you uncomfortable, if the conversation is not making you uncomfortable, you're not getting an education. And so prior to really the last few years, I would say there is no fourth wave. But I think there is a fourth wave is kind of this move toward trigger warnings and things such as that. And on the positive side, the intersectionality piece, where the feminist movement is not this hegemonic monolith, but very intricate and nuanced.
I'll kind of just add to, in terms of social media, that was something that for me I was very anti-social media for the longest time, and being able to see how my experience with feeling like I wasn't able to talk about my abortion. I was raised strict Catholic. This is not something that you discuss at the dinner table, much less discuss on a public forum. So with my decision to join in this conversation on a social media level was overwhelming and freeing and relieving all at the same time. And it's very interesting how social media has had an effect, especially in terms of reproductive rights with the Shop Your Abortion hashtag, I Stand with Planned Parenthood hashtag, and you see, how it can create a sense of community, but like Maria was saying earlier, finding ways to communicate and to interact and cultivate a different kind of network on a ground level is really important as well. And I just think it's interesting to see, Abby and I were talking about this earlier, how much young people are getting involved and how it's so interesting to see that some of these major movements are happening with people that are in high school, that are your age in college. And so for me, it's exciting to see the level of involvement and see how this will progress, whether I think positively or negatively about social media.
Hello. Okay. So this might seem like a really overly simplistic answer, like I'm taking the easy way out, but I think that today's feminism among this generation is whatever the hell we want it to be. It's whatever that means to you. I also don't really believe in, critiquing others for calling themselves feminists if they don't prescribe to that same specific brand of feminism that I do. I have a lot of people about Sarah Palin. But, but I've seen, I just feel like I've had a lot of experiences in my life where I've seen women really lashing out at each other and tearing each other down during conversations about feminism. And I think that, depending on the kinds of exposure that people have had to different topics, different literature, different experiences in their lives, we all really view this in a very different way, and I would never want to alienate anyone by saying exactly what I think feminism is, because I think we all define that for ourselves, and the more that we can do to engage people around this issue as opposed to alienate them is going to be a good thing. And social media is playing a huge part in engaging people around issues that they weren't talking about before. Sure, there are a lot of really, irritating things that I see playing out on social media very frequently, where I'm like, wow, what have we been talking about? But I think that social media is putting a lot of things on people's radars that were not there before. Like, for example, just recently I had a 2.5-hour long conversation with my husband's radiant authority about the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. And was that a little bit painful? Yeah, maybe. But it was also an experience worth having. And I was like, Dorothy, why are you thinking so much about this? And it's because of things that she's been seeing on social media and just more exposure to this, on different media platforms. And so I was like, wow, I'm really glad that we were able to talk about this, even though I'm here and you're over here. That's okay. Maybe we'll meet somewhere in the middle. But in summation, I think it's really hard to define. I think it means different things for everybody, basically.
Okay, so I haven't really honestly thought about interim feminism very hard in a long time. People are like, hey, what do you do? And I said, I'm an abortion rights activist, and talk about ending the conversation, right? People either
I think, picking up on what Annie said about the future feminism, the movement, let's say things or whatever movement it is, you're going to have to address the multiple complex identities that people are. You are not just one thing. So Audre Lorde said, I'm paraphrasing, but the patriarchy needs multi-system, multi-source solutions, basically. So feminism in the past has been really focused on, the right to vote, or keeping, or attaining, and now it's keeping, right? So abortion, those are very powerful things. Much like the civil rights movement, it was giving black folks just the right to be human beings in a lot of places, and we're coming back to that, but the reality is that a lot of us intersect multiple issues, and especially for people of color, low-income people, differently abled people, queer people, whatever. Like, for example, the rights movement was all about marriage equality. Well, fuck marriage equality. If you're someone who doesn't believe in marriage, what was there for you as a queer person? And then left out, the reality is that many queer people, gay people, whatever you want to call them, trans people of color, out of the rights movement. I don't know what HRC is going to do now. There's marriage equality, I don't know what the hell HRC is doing about it. But there are a lot of radical queers out there who are like, wait a minute, we're still getting killed in the streets and still getting fired for being gay, so now what? But your movement has to be complex. It has to be multi-layered. You cannot just focus on abortion anymore, because abortion and the decision to have one, rape, intimate partner violence, all happens in the context of something else. So when we talk about choice, I think Liz may have spoke about it, choice, and Eddie too, it's a weird term because sometimes you don't have options. There's no such thing. And so, yes, feminism has been largely a white, middle class, upper class movement. And what has happened is that these other movements that have happened, like the labor movement, for example, the immigrants' rights movement, and other types of culture, Asian, Black, Latino, Chicana movements that have happened, have really addressed community issues. So in other words, feminism tends to look at what's happening maybe in my uterus, whereas other movements have looked at what's happening in the home industries and the schools and the churches, etc. So I think what we have to do as feminists now, and projects like that, or activists, whatever, is look at how does my issue, whether it's environmental, police violence, saving whales, whatever, how does that fit to the greater picture of just society? So looking at things like capitalism and inequality, that's a huge thing. Economic justice touches on a lot of things. When you look at, and it's been part of violence which happens anywhere in town, but look at how police addresses certain communities. Look at where police violence is happening. Look at what unfair wages does for a person in the long term. For certain public sector jobs, if you get paid shit, you're in kind of career and you go to retire, your retirement is based on what you earned. So if you earn shit, you're going to retire with shit. So there's long-term things. Abortion acts when I pay for my abortion. I'm having an abortion because I can't afford to have another child. So all those things fit into the complex picture of justice, really. Abortion itself, we keep talking about it, but whatever, abortion itself is an economic justice issue. I mean, you're talking about the ability to have children, to afford children, and also looking at the context in which you have or pay for your abortion. So, being able to control your fertility has a huge impact on your ability to be employable, to go to get an education, to make choices around what you want to do with your life. So when I worked at preterm a while ago and I did patient intake, a lot of times you talk to them and tell your story. These women were going off to the armed forces, they already had jobs, they were going to state, they were going to school, they were in high school, whatever. And so making the decision on abortion was directly tied to their ability to be wage earners. When you look at female-headed households, which is especially in low-income neighborhoods, so almost all female-headed households, you stack that with the fact that they're dealing with systemic violence, they're dealing with shitty school systems, they're dealing with men, fathers, baby daddies, whatever, who are usually locked up or being killed by police. They have shitty grocery stores, horrible environmental systems. On top of that, they're working a low-wage job at a corporation that doesn't give them any benefits or maternity leave. So all of those things are absolutely with the labor movement, with the civil rights movement, with the police violence movement, etc., because it's really truly all connected. And when we look at things that way, then we start to have some great conversations about privilege and what our focus is. When you kind of look at your priorities, you start to look at where you land with the line of things, if that makes any sense. So feminism, when we look at me, my individual choice, that takes a certain amount of privilege that a lot of people don't have. And I think that we have to have some more conversation with ourselves, white, black, whatever you are, to look at what privilege you hold and how you can leverage that privilege to further the movement. In other words, are you an ally or are you an accomplice? And an ally just stands by your side, but an accomplice helps you get shit done. So if we start to look at things in that context, not just being stabbed to have privilege, I'm sorry, I'm white, or I'm sorry, I'm straight, and more like, how can I take the resources that I have access to dismantle and maybe to some extent sabotage the system? Then we are putting that privilege to get used and taking that power and kind of counteracting what's already there. So I'm just tossing all that out there, because you tossed a bunch out of us. And then I'll just touch on where we are.
It was that talk show format.
If I could headline, just like anything directly related to your abortion-related talking, Maria, if you look now at economic power city, who's in power? What does it look like? How do they get that power? And for me, the most important question in regards to abortion rights has to do with how does denying abortion access help the powers that be stay in power? Who benefits when poor women, especially poor women of color, are without a choice in their reproductive agency and freedom? If you keep impoverished people in poverty by forcing a pro-birth agenda, not addressing any of the social issues around what might alleviate or possibly provide a different option for abortion, if you're advocating that no abortion happens, this is obviously done on purpose, and it's done with the intent to be a classist and racist part of essentially what is public health systemic failure in America. We have always used eugenics and these sort of cultural ideologies of scientific racism and the idea that Americans must have a superior breeding system where only the most fit to produce have a full reproductive choice. And this is a history that's hundreds of years old. I'm touching on it about units later. Get at me. But essentially, the capitalism question is looking at the status quo of our economic realities as Americans and identifying that the status quo needs a lack of choice to be the reality for most women in America if our class system is going to stay the way it is and keeping the people who profit from it currently profiting. So.
Burn it down.
Do you have any more thoughts on that?
I'll add just a little bit. What you guys both said was just amazing and hard. Yeah, very hard to follow. I will, and the abortion thing is something that I focus on because it was something of it was a personal experience that I, really just kind of just went with. And in discussing privilege, it's such an important thing to recognize and to be able to utilize. The fact that I can even talk about my abortion is a privilege, and that I'm not faced with any direct threat. The fact that I, was able to make that decision. I wasn't in an abusive relationship. I was able to adjust my work schedule. I was able to get financial aid for it because I couldn't afford it. I was able to have transportation there. There are so many different facets of just, you know, making the decision of whether you have a child or don't have a child. And that doesn't even cover, you know, getting into adoption and all these other different things that are umbrellaed under reproductive rights. That it is, again, and I know that I'm stressing this point that everybody else did, but it's so important to understand how, in the bigger picture, and this is what I try to do with Proclaim Your A, is understanding that it's not just about abortion. It's about your autonomy and your sense of human agency, and that is going to be experienced in different ways by everybody. And my story is not going to be the same as anybody else's, and in recognizing the power that you have when you understand the differences and learn how to you know, make those work for everybody, then that's when the strength of the movement, which I really like that term, that's when the strength of the movement builds and becomes more cohesive so that it's not alienating. And it's not just, it's not me including people in my idea of what these rights should look like, but it's letting others voice their opinions and come from their own perspective and their own experience in building that. So.
Yeah, can I say one more thing about? Yeah, I keep thinking about this comes up in my teaching at Laurel. I teach world history classes. We start off with the 4 early civilizations, which used to just bore the hell out of me. And then I started thinking about the way in which world history is about civilization, which is about staying in one spot and systematic agriculture and collecting stuff and building buildings and being in one place. That's so common to our contemporary way of life. We don't even question it. It didn't have to go that way. It could have gone that we did not establish civilization and that we were hunter and gatherers. And then things would be quite different, right? Because when women are, then there's a lot at stake for them to reproduce, right? There's a lot at stake for capitalism to exist, right? So the poorest women who don't have choices are then the ones that are operating workers at McDonald's and other low-wage jobs, which may sound conspiratorial, but it is. That's my area. But that's sort of the food that we're feeding to poor people, and so it's foods that are not connected to wholesome, to health and to being able to be optimal thinkers and optimal citizens, right? It's food is something we face to be complacent and to get to the next place quickly. So it sounds very conspiratorial by that. Conspiratorial. But is it a word? Conspiratorial.
Well, you have the
Maybe it's just like an echo of that in my head. But I tell my students that shows like Hoarders and Hoarder phenomenon could not exist if we were hunter-gatherer society. So it all, you kind of think back to television. But really, reproductive rights are connected directly to capital because our bodies become
let them talk about their experiences. And in reproductive justice, we talk a lot about experiences being they're very valid. They are just as valid as any scientific, inquiry or output, for example. Experiences are very important. So listening to those experiences, much like people talking about their abortion, can be transformational. And when we were able to hear from people and kind of empathize with them, you were able to start to build some bonds and commonalities. I think that's the first thing. That's a long-ass process. And it's a very humbling process, so be prepared for that. It's a degree of risk-taking that you have to do before you can do any sort of collaborative work. Liz will talk about this, but looking at even just yourselves here as a Cleveland community, how many of you actually know each other in this room? I mean, for the people that you don't know in this room, you might want to say hello. I found a lot of friends and people on my campus. It was just a good time. I was sober. It was awesome. I did all kinds of shit. And this is your opportunity to build friendships for life. I feel like I'm a freshman counselor, but seriously, these are future comrades. And so, seriously, in this room, look around and look at who you don't know and make a point to know them. I say this because I met Liz through a consciousness raising group, which those of you who have probably taken our class know about, but consciousness raising was a form of communication that women did back in the 70s to talk about shit, talk about life, to kind of affirm and validate that they were the ones going fucking crazy in this jacked up world, which led to people being in the streets and taking action. So, how would that look on your campus? What does the kind of conscious raising group look like for students at Cleveland State? Because social media only does so much. There's still going to have to be human touch, human contact to connect with each other. And because you're in this kind of incubator, it's very easy then to create those types of in-person networks. So I encourage you guys to do that. And because, as Liz said earlier, Cleveland State has so many people from so many different backgrounds, you're going to talk to people who clean toilets, who work in McDonald's, who were raised off food stamps, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to get a lot of education from just your peers here. It's not like you're going to go out to projects and start knocking on doors and talking to people about immigration and shit like that. But what you can do is offer them something. So again, we're talking about allies and accomplices. What do you have to offer those people to work with you? And part of that's going to be a shared vision. What do we want? Because we have something in common that we want, and then how are we going to work to achieve that together? So that's what I was suggesting too. Again, that's really complicated, but you're smart. Your kids are in college, you'll figure it out. But part of what you want to do is start here. If you don't know each other in this room, you can't do shit out in the community. So, looking at organizations like this, build alliances so that you can fortify yourselves and then create action plans that will allow you to not only learn and empathize, but also kind of build vision. If any of that makes sense.
Yeah, next question. I was thinking this the other day because about 3 years ago when they built the Langston across the street, there were lots of protests among students, and the newspaper covered it, and the news media was here because they were not using union workers, and they were bringing workers, all white workers, all white male workers actually from southern Ohio up every day to work. And when I was walking from Superior the other day, I noticed that they're building something else. You know, I know what it is, I don't. And I looked at it and I thought, here we go again. It's another non-union, seeming non-union. I would have to check it out, but it is a similar situation that we had 3 years ago where we're in this urban setting, right? And there are these high-paying jobs that are not going to people who live in this community. That to me is a question. That might not be your question,
No, absolutely.
Hi, I just want to present maybe a different perspective a little bit. I've considered myself a feminist for many, many years. I was an activist, separate from a feminist, in my teens, in my 20s. But there's only so much energy, and personally my skills and my training are as an engineer. And so at some stages in life, I can go out and be an activist to the whole world. Certainly at every stage in life, anyone who knows me will know that I've had personal arguments and personally pushed it within my tiny little bubble. But there's only so much energy. That doesn't make me not a feminist. That means that's not my moment. My moment may come again when I have more time in my life. It's to you guys to be the activists, but it's also to you guys to be the feminists, whether or not your great love and your great passion is to be out there fighting day in and day out. I was involved in half of these issues in the 1970s, personally involved in most of them. You gotta love it all.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that, especially because you said engineering, I would imagine you've got some stories to tell about being a woman in engineering.
Absolutely. Only one in my class.
Exactly. So I think, and Liz talked about this, and a couple of people talked about it, Liz especially, your activism is going to be macro and micro, so especially depending on what you're studying, you might be the only whatever in that particular field, and that's going to be a fight in and of itself. And that's probably all you can handle, and that's okay, because your fight, probably whatever the fuck you did in your engineering department, is making way for some people that are there now, and that in and of itself is an impact or legacy. It doesn't mean you have to show up at rallies or be, holding signs and shit, which is absolutely a way to build visibility and awareness, but workplace shit, that's like important, because we're talking about work, pay, capitalism, equity, the stuff you do in your workplace and in your home, in your church, in your temple, whatever, to make space for people like yourself or for others that you care about, whatever, that is activism more than anything else. So there's a lot of people who are showy activists, they'll show up for something, or they'll sign a petition, or they'll tweet real quick, but that's all they do. When you're living and fighting with that professor who says dumb shit, or you're insisting that you get promoted because you deserve it, not because someone else was there, whatever, those are all fights that contribute to the overall efficacy and impact and legacy of what we're trying to accomplish, for sure. So I say that to you, especially some of you probably already figured that out, that you're only of something, or that you might get passed up for an internship, or you might not be called on in class. All that crap counts for something when you combat that on that micro level. So I absolutely agree with your perspective.
I did the rallies in my 20s. I had the energy for both.
Yeah.
And kids at that age too.
Now you're just like building spaceships or whatever engineers do.
It was abortion rights primarily, and other issues, but
You're probably so good at math.
only so many.
I said you're probably so good at math. Like,
Yes,
women who are good at math, that's so, I love that. That shit never gets old, I swear. Because I don't do math. I went to clean public schools. So I don't know. They're working on it.
Did I just tribute in the back?
Wait, no, I asked the question. Great, you just solved all the world's problems. Thank you. Oh no, sorry.
So we're talking about how the
Engineer, design me a system to measure that. So solidarity is a huge issue, and I would say that social media helps us to be global. So that's a strength. But you're right. People will tweet and police each other and hashtag activism themselves to death, and then people still get shot in the streets. And what do we do? Coalition work, which is on your list of conversations, is super important for a number of reasons. One, resources are very scarce, so instead of fighting each other for the same pots of money and people and capacity, let's share them. I would say that you have to find natural alliances. You want to look at your low-hanging fruit. So, because the reality is that a lot of labor people are homophobic. A lot of Black activists might be horrible feminists. You might have gays who are completely classist and racist. I've met them all. So the reality is that you're going to have to work on natural alliances where you can. That means availing yourself to different movements one at a time almost, to find, again, commonalities. What is your shared vision? Because ultimately, what people are going for in social justice movements, whatever, is pretty much the same. To dismantle the white, patriarchal, waspy structure. So to the most almost extent, that's really the end game. So when you can find ways to share resources, to identify opportunities together, and to look at establishing common goals, you're talking about coalition building, and that's how you build solidarity. It's about supporting other movements. So for example, NOW, which is an anti-trade organization, the National Organization for Women, made a statement about the murder of Sandra Bland. Okay, so that was a Black Lives Matter, say her name sort of situation, but then the NOW organization spoke about it. Or when the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force talks about police violence. For example, when marriage equality became legal, and on the steps of the Supreme Court, Obergefell, one of the plaintiffs, he talked about the shooting in South Carolina in his speech about marriage equality. Okay, so you have this white gay man who just won the right to marry his now deceased partner, talked about why that was just as important connected to the shooting in South Carolina. That shit is solidarity, okay? So when you see other movements not saying anything, like Planned Parenthood, I gotta call them out, not speaking about certain issues that impact people that very much use their services, I got problems with that. So when you're able to talk about why in the labor movement gay marriage matters or whatever, or why trans lives matter in a anti-capitalist socialist group, or if anarchists can speak to the power of immigrant rights, that's what you're talking about solidarity. If you don't say shit because you're like, oh, that person's gonna talk about that issue, that's when you're missing an opportunity to demonstrate that you understand where they're coming from and that you're there to have their backs, if any of that makes sense. Okay.
In a way, it's an issue by issue. It's an issue from where you're interested in and then you coach based on the issue.
And just everything that, a lot of us are working on in the movement is so siloed. It's so frustrating. It really is. And like you said, we are desperately fighting each other for the same resources. And why are we not sharing them? Why are we not leveraging one another's expertise? When someone working on a specific issue needs something from someone else, they'll go to them and they'll just immediately sit down at the table and present them with their personal agenda. And I think we really need to approach others with this kind of sense and this mind of, I'm coming to you because I'm seeking to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and then I want to talk about how we can help each other, because we're all working towards those same goals, and it's really all about working together, because every single one of you in this room has a tremendous amount of personal power. There's no doubt about that. But we have so much more when we're working together and when we're doing that in a way that is respectful and, is really moving us forward towards breaking down some of these systems of oppression. Because if working in a way that was so siloed for decade after decade was effective at all, wouldn't we be farther along than we are right now? I think so.
You want to literally map it out. I mean, it depends on how you learn and how you think, but literally map that shit out, make some lists, and look at common targets, look at decision makers, look at common enemies, and start to map out where those things intersect, because that's where you're gonna find critical points of work. So for example, Annie is working on a particular piece of legislation in Columbus with NARAL. It might happen to intersect with something that the Rape Crisis Center or the DBAC is working on with similar legislature. So can we lobby together? For Liz's example on campus, if you're concerned about union workers on campus, the decision makers who make that are going to be your board of regents and your president, right? Similar targets, just like safety on campus, same decision makers. So starting to look at mapping out your assets, your shared assets, looking at your shared threats are going to be important. And then looking at, again, pooling those resources. So what do I have? What do you have? What's going to help us advance ourselves further? So literally getting that out of a piece of paper, calling together working collaborations. So if you know there's different leaders from different groups, student unions or student government or whatever, literally start calling together some working groups to look at what issues are we working on and find out where there's intersections. So that's a practical way to do it. That's what I suggest you do.
And practice here. For those of you who are students, which is most of you here at CSU, use this space, this environment as a microcosm of a bigger world. I tell that to the Laurel students all the time. I'm pointing at Lane's over there, but this place very much echoes the broader power structure, right? And in many ways, it's such a huge apparatus because it's a state-run institution. So if you can be doing what you all are doing now and having conversations, and then taking that to looking at issues about whatever the health, do you all get health insurance through CSU, or are you still getting it from parents?
It is offered.
It is offered. What do they offer as far as reproductive rights? What are they paying for as far as birth control?
Yeah, can you get an abortion thing with your
CSU insurance? I don't know. I know
shit.
So this is a place to practice. And I
Agenda item number 1, kids, write it down. We're working on it. We'll be back in 3 weeks.
And I remember feeling like that's really, I was also an undergrad at Kent State and spent most of my career as an undergrad, was there for 5 years. And part of the reason why it took me 5 years is because I started organizations. I worked on Amnesty International. We did hanger drives. I love that it's called a hanger bombing now. We just collected a bombs. Out of Sandra Day O'Connor, Annie. There was no bombing. It was just mailing. You know what I'm saying? So, but use this spot, this place to practice and feel like excited about that you have this microcosm.
I will say, I did get hired in my current line for not because of the academics I was pursuing in college, but because of the organizing I was doing. So if you're passionate about the issue, it's going to come up later in your life. For the student now, we have resources in the institution.
The last thing I just want to add over to that is that, as simplistic as it seems or it sounds, really listening to the whatever movement you're trying to get involved in is so important. And it's so powerful when you just sit there and really listen to what people are asking for or what they're demanding, and understanding where they're coming from. And especially if it's something that you've never necessarily been exposed to, like the police brutality thing is just unbelievable to me. And I've never personally experienced it, but learning how to get more involved, the most important thing I do right now is listen and see, where my place is, where my voice is, and learning how to build relationships that way. And so, like I said, even though it seems simple, listening is just so important for finding your place and getting involved in whatever it may be.
So we have about 5 minutes left, unfortunately.
This guy was awesome soft though.
Yeah, he could ask this question.
I have one, I'll take 60 seconds. I'm a white Anglo-Saxon, Christian male.
Hello.
If you haven't noticed.
I'm Lutheran. Hello.
But I'm just wondering, first, thank you all. You enlightened me a lot. I've actually been progressive sitting here and understanding what we're talking about. I consider myself progressive. I'm working on Bernie Sanders' campaign, trying to get some stuff done around here. But where do we make mistakes as males, especially white males?
You can't answer this with 5 minutes left. Oh my
Right.
Wear your socks.
And continue wearing socks like that. I love
Your socks.
so much.
And you're the black man's going to speak. You were going to speak. But so that's was super awesome, and that's a different panel. But let me tell you, they start asking. You know what I mean? You have to be open. And I think that people with privilege, male or not, or whatever, you have to open yourself to vulnerabilities and take risks and be ready to be humble. Okay? And that when you do that, a lot of your mansplaining and straight pointing and white explaining tends to diminish immediately when you're able to do that. Don't take up so much physical space. Dudes come in and take a bunch of fucking space. White people always look at the first people to talk and shit. It's so annoying. Just sit in the back, sit in one seat, and shut up. Right? Because that's like really like little things. You come in the space and then you just sit your ass in the back and you shut up. And if you are privileged enough to be deemed appropriate to ask the question, you are thankful for that. You know why? That helps you listen. And dudes, and I think it's a result of a scientifically inclined culture that likes evidence, which is always a good thing a lot of times when we talk about experiences. When we talk about women who talk about their stories about contemporary rights, abortion, rape, and things like that, well, why this and what about that? And I don't recall that. My boyfriend works in technology, and I tried to talk to him about women in tech, and how that shit kind of fucked us sometimes. So I've never seen a woman in my office have a problem. So it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. So don't do that shit. Not for everybody, not just all of y'all with some privilege. So when I'm in this space, and my cisgender ass comes to a trans space, I shut the fuck up. And so that's really, progressive people make a lot of assumptions about how awesome they are. And that is really fucking annoying. Stop assuming you're awesome. You are not. That's a step for you to do too. Because you are, if you are that awesome, we'd be in a better place. So, as so I think that asking that question is awesome, and again, it's the same thing. It's like, you know, especially specifically for my center, what is your candidate going to do for X, Y, Z issues? You know, but again, relating those messages and sitting back and being open to that space. But I don't want anyone to feel guilty for who they are. I'm over that shit. But what I'm saying is own it, accept it, and then leverage it. But then we're going to let Broccoli talk. So I just so excited about that.
Sorry. I was like, what now? What's the question?
Did you want to answer the question?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on what he asked. And I was taking Roots of Rock and Soul with me in this last semester. And they went over a lot of American history. And they delved into particularly the 50s, and we talked about how after the war and everything, a lot of people built up this culture of trying to rebuild the country, rebuild everything, rebuild the morals. And they started, they created the suburbs and everything was the same. They built this mentality of security. And when you do that, you close off possible threats. And I feel like a lot of what's going on is just the continuation of the same theme throughout the generations. It's not necessarily racism as much as it's this cordon off mentality that roots itself in one or two specific things. So when other cultures come in, it's not even a question of do we hate or fear them. It's more a question of, oh, let's not get involved because, oh, what is this? This is different. I'm not used to this. I don't have the capability to understand or protect or reach out into said culture because all I can do is really take care of my family, and therefore I'm not going to branch out into this thing. And that turns itself into a perpetuating cycle. It's like, it's not even the hatred of other cultures, the misinterpretation of who they are that spreads racism or inequality the most. It's the inability to try to reach out and learn about them that makes it the worst. Because if you can't understand something, you can't quantify it, you can't possibly make changes within yourself to change the world.
Yeah, okay, so I thought you had a question, but let me just tell people hate certain people. I'm gonna tell you that right now. It can be misunderstanding, but when you say that, you give people latitude they don't deserve. When you look at what the Southern Poverty Law Center, they say did after Barack Obama became president, the rise in hate groups, just the vitriol that was aimed at the office of the president just because he was there. That's some bullshit. It's one thing not to like George Bush because you think he's an idiot. It's one thing to not like Hillary Clinton because you don't like her stance on foreign policy. But when you just hate someone and you just can't stand their very being, that shit is real and it's global. There are people who hate women. Okay? There are people who hate the fact that we talk, that we exist, and that we move and have autonomy. Okay? That is real shit. So when you talk about, like, well, they just don't understand, no, there are people who completely understand other people, but they don't give a fuck and they hate us. And so when you live in a society where people hate you, okay, when cops are quick to shoot you when you are 12 years old without asking any questions, that is stemmed from some deep-seated hate. And it might not be conscious hate, but it is a deep-seated historical systemic hatred of certain people that has led to the prosecution and persecution of people for time immemorial, truly. So I don't say that to be adversarial, but I don't want to give people that type of space because it's real. Rape comes from a place of hate. Intimate part of violence comes from a place of sheer hatred and wielding of power. And so when you think about the fact that people live in a space where there is stressful to be black in America, it is stressful to be a woman in this society because people hate you. And when you look at other countries where women are literally murdered for being born, that shit is real. And part of that hatred you will never be able to change, but what you can do is amplify dignity of not only yourself, but of other people. And when we start to amplify dignity and make people be human, I mean, black people aren't even be seen as human. We are cattle, we are in prisons, we are serving, okay, immigrant populations of people, Latinos coming to this country are serving and cleaning in dark, secret places, the sex trade, all that is cattle, it is slavery, okay, and that is the real history of our country. So people very much consciously hate people, and if you read the comment section of any website, you will see that. Because humans have logic, and if all it took was for us to logically explain the dignity and humanity of another human being, we'd be set. But there are people who just simply do not want to give up their power. So we take it from them, and if we have to kill them, so be it. But that's me being an advocate of bloody revolution. Different panel. What I say, but I'm dead fucking serious that there are people who fucking hate you. I mean, when you are gay, black, or whatever, there are people who literally don't want you to exist. That's real talk. And so don't let them rewrite the historical narrative, brother. Do not let them do that because they want you to think it's okay and that that's just the way shit is, and it ain't. So call them out on that shit whenever you have to, as long as you can safely do it, because the hate is real, and it's going to take everybody in this room, plus their kids and their grandkids and their great-grandkids, to dismantle that, because that's how long it was before us. So, like, burn the shit down. One of our mentors, my grand mentor, Sally Tatnall, literally, how old is Sally? She's 78, and this woman is telling you, for real, just burn everything the fuck down. She has seen it all, she has done it all, and her solution is just to burn it down. And I'm telling you, ask yourself, how am I going to burn shit down? That's what I'm going to leave you with. How am I going to burn shit down? See us after for ideas.
But yes, there are historic ideologies at work as well.
Thank you, Dr. Black.
That's my last word. So, oh wait, eradicate the patriarchy. Eradicate the patriarchy.
And to tie this back to your question about what can men do, after I shouldn't even be following this. God.
No, you should have dropped the mic and we're done.
Fucking burn it down. But then to that, don't say, oh, but not all men or not all.
Yes.
Because that, I will tell you right now, it's the biggest, for me at least, it's the biggest and weakest derailer, and it just invalidates everything. It's disgusting to me. So burn the motherfucker down and don't say not all.
Don't be a benevolent sexist. There is a lot of benevolent sexism in this movement. You know, I have had, many times I've had, you know, male colleagues come into a project that I'm working on and act as though they're there to help me, and then at the end they just put their name on the product that I created. So I slash their tires. No, I'm just kidding. But I just think that, you know, never say not all men. Oh, that is so disgusting. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's just really gross. But, you know, walk with us in this work. Don't treat me like you're paving the road for me, because you're not. But I want you there with me at the same time. And I think one of the worst things that I experience that offends me to my very core is when people treat me like I hate men because I work in domestic violence and that I think all men are perpetrators of violence, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. I desperately want you at the table with me, coming up with solutions with me, but please stand by my side and don't treat me like I'm standing on your shoulders, because there are cases where you're standing on mine. Boom.
Like, that's like the benevolent thing too. Like, you're so pretty for a feminist. I didn't expect you to be so attractive.
Oh, right.
That's amazing.
Yep, that happens, and you know, you get called sweetheart and honey in meetings. Like, I'm your colleague, I am your peer, I'm not a sweetie. You know, I had a colleague that I worked very closely with on a big project, and we were literally referred to as the girls. We both have names, we're both human beings, we're both professionals. People called us the girls. People commented on how long my hair is getting. We co-authored one of the very first school district policies that addresses sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. Who gives a shit about my hair? Okay, please. Thank you. And please stay after for the general roast that we're going to be having of all men. No, I'm just kidding. But not all men.
But not all men.
No. But seriously, thank you for asking. You are amazing.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
And you are great for being here, all of you.
And then I'll really quickly wrap up. As far as the abortion-specific movement goes, like the movement for abortion rights, as men in the movement, I assume that you would know if you come into the movement that abortion obviously affects men, and not all people who have abortions identify as women. So let's broaden who the pro-choice movement is for in more ways than race. Let's do it so that we can really amplify the fact that all of us are affected by the access issue. So there's space for men in the movement.
Yeah. Okay, so one of my points we talked a lot was just that modern feminism doesn't have specific goal and doesn't deal with men's problems.
Wait, please say it again, I'm sorry.
Okay, one of my points that I always talk against is that modern feminism doesn't have a specific goal and it doesn't deal with real problems.
You said you don't talk to them anymore? Wait. Did you say you don't talk to them anymore?
You still talk to him? Why? Are you related to them? Does he have something you need? Are you don't with him if you're doing that. Because really, anyone who says something like that, you have to disassociate yourself with dumb people. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I have shut out family. I will shut anyone out who's about the bullshit, okay? Because this is your life at stake. You don't make friends. Fuck that shit. So we discussed feminism already, and we said that it has multiple goals and it doesn't need to be defined. Now, here's the thing. Feminism, to me, other people define it, is about the uplift of whole communities in which women are the center. Women are the center of all communities, whether you like it or not. Women are the heart and lifeblood of civilizations, which is also a video game I'm starting to play we must discuss. It's literally called Civilization. I know. So one, To me, that's what feminism is, right? And when you uplift women, you uplift whole communities and whole societies. When women benefit, everyone benefits. So when you can do that residually, to quote one of the greatest presidents in American history, the trickle-down effect of feminism is that men will benefit from our uplift. Why? Because we fucking take care of everybody. But step one, don't talk to him anymore. If he's your dad, limit calls to once a week. If it's a friend you're screwing, stop screwing him. Don't let him use your notes. Don't loan him your books. Don't fucking associate with him. Block him on all social media channels because he's an idiot. There is perhaps an opportunity to educate him, but he sounds like a mansplainer. And he is someone who thinks his penis is the center of everything. And people like that don't deserve your time and attention because you're valuable. And I ain't got time for that shit. Let me do that. Because I love you. I love all you motherfuckers in here. I love every single one of you because you're valuable people, but you don't have time to drag people like that along. If he can't even come to you and be like, gee, woman with the teal sweater thing, tell me about what you're trying to accomplish. I'm trying to understand if I have a place in it is a different thing than prescribing something you don't know shit about, which is something that don't do that. Okay, so my instinct is to be like, write that sucker off immediately. But then the positive part of me says, maybe you can scoot him a pamphlet or some literature that may open up a dialogue, but if he fucks up that dialogue, shut it down. Okay? So you don't have to answer shit, but if you want to, your answer is feminism is the answer to all of our fucking problems. And when you dismantle the patriarchy, everybody fucking wins. You know why? Because masculinity hurts everybody, femininity hurts everybody, and if we just scratch that shit, we can all like eat a pizza and watch Golden Girls and just be happy. That's my vision. The end.
They help you answer the question. Or he could just call, or just have him call us. Just have him call us.
Invite him to these panels.
Give you our number. We'll meet him for coffee. Fair trade coffee. Vegan food.
Yes.
Vegan.
Well, at this time,
we'll take questions after. I don't want to keep this because I love all the questions.
I want you to keep us, but
I know we're paying for this room. I'm just kidding.
We would like to invite you guys to personally have discussions with our panel members. Definitely stop and look at all the literature that they have provided, grab some snacks, and if you want any more information, just, talk. Thanks for coming. Yeah. This was amazing.
Thank you guys.